Waking up in Asra's arms, I thought I'd found my safe haven, but a shadowy buyer lurks in the background. Who am I truly prey to? 61 The dining room was fairly calm today. Apparently, most of the wolves were still out on a run. It was only 12. But Piper was hungry and decided that I had to join her. I didn't mind enjoying the softness of bread and pastries. I could well class it as one of my favorite pastimes. Asra wasn't here, much to my disappointment, so lunchtime passed pretty uneventfully. No one stared at me as much as they did in the past. The odd wolf saying good afternoon and then that dreaded word, Luna. Mulling over the new title I was unwillingly given. What is it? My head snapped to Piper with confusion. What is what? My lunch. It's just no, not your lunch. She grunted, rolling her eyes. Your head. What are you frowning at? I laughed. Oh, it's nothing. Is it though? She tucked grinning, shrugging. I played it off as nothing. Just the new title. Huh, I see. Think you are not worthy of it. She smirked. No, not that. I looked around, dropping my voice. Don't want it. Her head cocked with confusion. How could you not? Ultimate power at your fingertips, and the entire pack to control. I laughed, standing to leave the dining room. Yes, you are totally selling it now. She nudged her shoulder into mine as she rose too, snorting. I'm glad I am. It is your destiny. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. There it was again, my destiny. My fate. They already played my life out like a book and I, the main character, just didn't know the final chapters. I did not know how it ended, but some strange moon goddess already chose my fate. It was eerie, rather strange to think of. I was not a religious person. My town raised rather atheist. I learned that many decades ago. Most of the humans believed in a god, but a lot of them lost their faith when the supernatural came and killed most of us. My parents in my town were one of those groups of people, born to live day until the end, when we succumbed to a sickness or accident. So it was strange for me to think there was something else, that I was somewhat soulmate. The fact I even had a soulmate was bizarre. I didn't deserve one. What had I ever done in my life to deserve one? I did nothing extraordinary. I worked, looking after my family when that passed, and then got engaged to an evil man. How did that make me a suitable leader of an entire pack? Better yet, Asra was a continental alpha, so that just adds even more power to my shoulders. I didn't want it. I didn't want to control people. I didn't want to decide their fate. I couldn't be a leader of a race that I wasn't even born into. It didn't feel right. They were raised their own way. They have their own beliefs and systems. A human controlling so many wolves. It was humorous. My mood doing a complete flip. I told Piper what I felt as I climbed back into bed. She sat on the end, frowning as she listened patiently. It felt good to let it out. I had complete trust in Piper. She listened to my feelings and let me rant uninterrupted until I reached the end of my monologue. Then I sighed, staring up at the plain white ceiling. Well, I don't know what to say to cheer you up, but I will say something. She began. You may feel these things, but you are here for a reason. You have more empathy, more emotion than most of the wolves here. I see it in the way you talk to people, but yet you bring yourself down so much. About to protest, when she shot me a glare to stop. I sucked my lips into my mouth, my eyes widening with understanding. The fact you feel so down about this because you feel unworthy just shows how gentle you are. Maybe it's what we need, a gentle hand to help us. She shrugged. Also, you must have some instinct, no matter what you say, because you live in his room now. A realization dawning on me. Well, yeah, because to my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. What is? She smirked. What is easier? You haven't fucked so. Groaning, I rolled my eyes. Why is that such an obsession? She laughed. It's not an obsession. It just completes the mating process. Why even have a mating process? I grunted. It's unnecessary. You can just marry someone and save all the biting and rituals. Well, when you mate, it is forever. Marriage can be reversed. Right. And I nodded. Mating can't. The only way to reverse a bite is by not mating in time. In time for what? To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐬 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 for your unfailing 𝐷𝐸𝐳𝐷𝐸𝐬. I don't know. She shrugged. It's never happened. Way to make that sound daunting. She laughed. Not that bad. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐬 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 for your unfailing 𝐷𝐸𝐳𝐷𝐸𝐬. Is it already bit you? So the best part is coming. Not if I can help it. I muttered. What do you mean? I made a bet with Asra. I sat up, grinning. A bet. She shook her head. That can't be good. Yep. I bet I won't fall into a sex trap within 2 weeks. You're joking. Right. Her eyes widened. Laughing? You won't win that. Of course I will. If I'd avoid him all the time and not let him touch me. I crossed my arms. Once your period is over, it's gotta go downhill. She raised an eyebrow. The mating process is legit. Even being near him is going to set your instincts alive. That I won't go near him. And if you survive 2 weeks of burning hormones, then what? She grinned. Then I get the freedom to do as I please. Asra's gonna turn into a black hole. He's going to go crazy. She snorted. I may just have to extend my stay to stick around. You have to stay forever. I thought I told you this. I rolled my eyes. She giggled. I wish I could. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐬 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 for your unfailing 𝐾𝐥𝐳𝐷𝐸𝐬. I really do. As soon as I find a man to settle down with, they will expect me to be the alpha female of my pack. My heart ached at the thought of the inevitable. Of my closest friend not being so close to me. She would move hours away, to a place I would need permission to even enter. Even then, I doubt I could go alone. Being alone meant so much responsibility, half of which I did not know what to expect. If I was going to be Asra's soulmate, I really had to knuckle down on this whole role thing. The next few days passed easily. I spent most of my time wallowing in my pity upstairs. Asra only appeared at night time and first thing in the morning. On day 2 of Aunt Flo's visit, I had apparently been rather grumpy. But if you ask me, not putting the seat back down after you piss is grounds for a scolding. Asra had practically beamed at my anger. The fact I was trying to scold him didn't even cross his mind. He found me funny. I could tell. I was just a little human, wonder he loved to watch explode. Like a toddler watching a mouse in a cage. Asra did not seem the slightest bit affected by my mood swings. By the time my period ended, I was back to my usual self. Waking up beside Asra the next day, I felt no different. He was already awake and showered. The water running being what disturbed me. I slept unusually light last night, which wouldn't be a reason to be concerned if it was such a drastic change in my sleeping habit. Back in Evermore, I slept light, trying to keep my wits about me. It had become ingrained in my body that I could wake at the slightest noise. I think the amount of times Darius would do something whilst I slept caused my body to react in its own way. But since coming here and settling in, I found my sleep becoming deeper. It has filled the past month with careless blink, and I'm asleep moments. So going back was strange. Good morning. Tulip. Asra smiled, coming over to me dressed in his just boxers. Sleep well. I narrowed my eyes, knowing what game he was playing. He was trying to get me to react to him already, but the joke was on him. Surprisingly, no. Patting the duvet. Oh, he cocked his head, smirking. Wonder why that could be. Probably the farts you let off in the middle of the night. I muttered sarcastically. He grinned, a bark of laughter escaping his lips. Oh yeah, must be that. Nothing really fazes this guy. I'm pretty sure I can tell you what it is. Moving to kneel on the bed, I eyed him 𝐸𝐵𝐷𝐸, perfectly capable of getting my body and mind in control. I could admire. Sure. Right now I could run my eyes down his almost naked body and not even care. Appreciate the tattoos, the curves and lines of his muscles and the way they dip down into his boxers. I did that every day. My eyes rose to meet his, a lazy smile on his face as he watched me take him in. Want to touch? I tried my hardest to keep a poker face, but the absolute humor of his words had me falling into laughter. My hands wrapped around my stomach to keep the amusement in, but I failed miserably. Asra's face dropped into a scowl, and he stood, retreating to his feet. Are you coming down for breakfast? He wondered. I snickered, letting the last pieces of giggles to leave my lips. What time is it? He glanced at his smart watch. 7:20. Falling back into my pillow. You woke me up at this time in the damn morning. I have to work early. There it was work. What do you even do? Pulling the duvet up to my neck and getting comfy. I control 41 packs, including my own. It is my duty to ensure they have supplies, guards, emergency protocols. All of it needs to be checked every month, he explained. Then I have to visit packs or have video calls to ensure they are running fine. Get into the depth of them and make sure that pack members aren't hiding anything. Like what? I wondered. War, abuse. He trailed off. Can't you just get an assistant to do that? I am Alpha. I have power and responsibility. And what about me? I muttered, how my eyes narrowed at him, knowing full where he had me with his wolf's ears. What am I supposed to do? If I was to be your Luna? He grinned, his eyes brightening. When you are my Luna, you will help me. How though? I know nothing about war strategies, training, or general wolfness. I shook my head. He grumbled with displeasure. You are my other half. We do it all together. Where I fail, you guide me. Where you need a boost, I lift you. Doesn't really answer my question, I mumbled, coming closer to run his hand down the side of my face. It'll all make sense. Trust me. Lulled by his words and deep blue eyes. I want to know what job I am signing up for. Kissing me softly. Oh, you do not know what I have in store for you. Asra moved away, grinning at my look of confusion. He sounded very suspicious right now, as though he already had planned my demise. But by the look in his eye, I knew most of it was sexual. So, with a grunt and a soft kick to the thigh, I dismissed him. He staggered back, never losing his amused glint as he walked into the closet. I huffed, rolling over in the bed, hoping to fall back asleep. Asra came out not a minute later, dressed in a nice suit. It caught my attention, my head lifting slightly to run down his legs and back again. Where are you going? Neighboring pack. You should come. He raised an eyebrow. I hesitated. The option of going on adventure sounded rather exciting, but then my insecurities took over, my weak human heart giving way. I shook my head, thanking him softly before laying back down in bed. I will see you tomorrow. I will be late tonight. 𝐾𝐿 extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Opening the main door. Don't do anything troublesome. Tulip. I smiled innocently. Mean. 62. I couldn't fall back asleep despite my best efforts and with a groaning grunt of displeasure. I forced myself to shower. I had slowly understood the more advanced workings of wolf world, finding the greatest pleasure in one of the multiple shower heads. The current was hard enough to massage my shoulders yet soft enough to not leave my skin feeling raw and itchy. Soapy and clean. I was dried and dressed by 9 in the morning. I was already halfway to the kitchen before I realized I had left the room by myself. I was so frustrated with my lack of sleep it didn't even occur to me I did it so willingly. Stepping into the elevator, I felt the annoyed haze lift from my shoulders at my minor accomplishment. The death box stopped earlier than normal and I felt my heart leap in my throat. The odds of it being someone I was friendly with were slim. 𝐿𝐼 and Eve usually ate breakfast before 8, since they often had to work. Piper was a possibility. But come on, how many times lucky am I going to get? I held my breath as the door slowly opened, revealing an enormous mass of wolf stood waiting. Everett stepped through, his face stoic much like his alpha's. His brown eyes were firm and emotionless, his black hair neatly styled short on his head. He stepped into the elevator, his hulking figure taking up a space of 2 of me. Luna, he nodded. I cleared my throat, awkwardly nodding in return. I wasn't a fan of being in such a small space with a male, especially alone. He stood opposing me, his eyes burning into the side of my head. I could feel them crawl through my skin, a feeling of being stripped bare for scrutiny shaming me. The elevator lurched again, the doors since closed from Everett's arrival. You should level your gaze with those who are below you, he stated as the elevator slowed. I flinched as he took a step forward, and I stepped further into the wall. Everett noticed, and from the corner of my gaze I saw him cock his head and flare his nostrils. Wolves were all so alike. You are nervous. You do not need to be. I swallowed nervously, keeping my eyes locked on the doors. They were going to ding any time now. I apologize if I have offended you. At that, I couldn't help but look at him as guilt coursed through me. You have not. I mumbled, hesitating my next response. I am just uncomfortable when I'm around men alone. The door slid open, a grateful sigh escaping me as soon as a gap was wide enough for me to run through. I didn't give him another chance to corner me. Speeding my way towards the kitchen, I ignored the self, forced guilt eating away at my insides and calmed myself down before entering the room, my palm pressed against the hardwood, swinging the doors open and stepping into the room. It was fairly dead. Most wolves with jobs already left for the day. I still knew little about the town, so after downing a coffee and some toast, I made my way out of the front door and onto the porch. The cool, boring porch. An idea struck me, one that involved some trouble and would gain me a mark on me Ailia versus Asra game. But first, I needed a vehicle and a driver. But who? Piper wasn't busy. But the girl was such a social butterfly I wasn't sure where she was most of the times. It was Thursday, which meant she most likely was in the spa or gym. My eyes caught sight of brown hair. Her dark blue eyes were concentrating on the ground as she walked. Lips moving softly, she mumbled to herself. I often found 𝐿𝐼𝐧 was one to talk to herself, whether she even realized. But I found it rather cute. Jogging down the steps, I was beside her quickly. She startled slightly, eyes running down my leggings and shirt with curiosity. 𝐃𝐚 𝐸𝐻𝐿 my 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐧. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. What's up? She wondered, holding my gaze. Hey, do you know how to drive? Me 𝐸𝐻𝐿 you. Humans aren't allowed to drive. Remember? Not remembering. We're not. Wolf law prohibits us from using any kind of motor, powered vehicle. Well, that spoiled my day. I muttered. Why did you want a car for? You can just ask for the taxi. What's that? She stifled a laugh, patting my shoulder. I forgot you lived in an abandoned village. I scowled, rolling my eyes. Not abandoned. Secluded. She snorted. Yeah. I'll ring them. Where do you want to go? Well, that is where I was wondering if you would help me. Are you busy? Nope. Not today. She grinned. What's the plan? Well, since they well know I am the alpha's mate, I thought we could make some good use of that alpha's tab and do some much-needed shopping. Her eyes widened with delight, fingers wrapping around my wrist. My favorite. Where to? I was thinking about the home and garden store. I have a project I want to work. It took little to convince 𝐿𝐼𝐧 to go shopping with me. She was right when she said it was her favorite. The taxi driver pulled up in a 4-wheeled car and I officially declared it another death trap. It was bouncy and jerky, the belt around my body not feeling safe enough to protect me from flying out of the car. Luckily, the drive only took a few minutes. The driver more than happy to hang around in a CAF until we were done. He insisted it was of no charge since it was his choice to not work and even left the car unlocked for us to come back to it. I had shrugged, not wanting to push the older man further, and left the death trap within seconds. 𝐿𝐈𝐧 giggled as she followed behind me, wrapping her arm through my elbow as we left the small car park. I didn't think that there would be such things as taxis in a pack. I admitted. I thought wolves just ran everywhere. She laughed. They do. It is more for us. When more wolves took humans as mates, they adapted. The taxi driver, George, was one of the first humans here about 30 years ago. He is the only human allowed to drive around here. You know many people. I pointed it out. Well, when I had nothing to do in the early days, I made it my mission to find out. She smirked. Now I help with the cleaning, so it keeps me busy. Heading into the store, she passed me a contraction on 4 wheels. Noticing my distress, she laughed and told me it was to carry all the things I want to buy. How much do you think I can rack up on the tab? I wondered as we started down the first aisles. It wasn't too busy in here. The odd person browsing the stores with baskets just like us. Considering Asra is minted, I'd say we have a pretty good budget. She quirked an eyebrow. Is this day one for mayhem or behaving? I grinned. Definitely mayhem. An hour later and we had filled the basket with shopping. The employees scanned and bagged everything before the taxi man came and helped us load it into the car. There were plants galore. Candles and wired pretty lights. A coffee table and a grey footrest. I chose a large white and light blue outdoor rug. Some paint. And had to chairs and a swing on order for delivery this lunchtime. They worked fast in this town. 𝐿𝐈𝐧 said it was because I was the Luna, but I told her she was being ridiculous. They didn't know me, so it was obviously purely to save their boredom. I bet there weren't many people coming in and spending thousands of coins. Did wolves even use the same coin system as Evermore? Was that another ploy of control? I had never seen werewolf money, it always being an IOU on Asra's tab. I was deep in thought when 𝐿𝐈𝐧 nudged me out of it. What are you frowning for? We had fun today. Right. I shook my head, my eyes wide. Oh, of course. We did. I was just thinking about something. It doesn't matter. To me 𝐊𝐴𝐺𝐸 𝐷𝐞𝐝. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐃𝐿. She hummed, climbing into the car. You getting in? The chairs will arrive in an hour. Yeah. I'm coming. 𝐿𝐈𝐧 had to sit in the front. They folded the 2 seats beside me in the death trap down to make room. It made the death ride home even more daunting. But at least the home and garden store employees looked thrilled as we drove away with half of their store in tow. Pulling up to the pack house, the driver backed up to the front steps. I'll leave the keys with ya. Just drop him with serenity when you'll get the chance. My eyebrow rose with curiosity as the man walked away. Climbing out of the car, I shut the door behind me before turning to 𝐿𝐈𝐧 with the burning question already halfway out of my mouth. Why serenity? She's his daughter. 𝐿𝐈𝐧 snorted. He mated a wolf and made serenity. Did not see that coming. I mused, watching as 𝐿𝐈𝐧 opened the back of the car. Small world. She snorted, shaking her head. Come on then. We got some decorating to do. Hi, fighting 𝐿𝐈𝐧. My hand wiped away the sweat on my brow. We had worked through early lunch until 7 in the evening, perfecting the front porch. Today had become a hot one and being dressed in leggings and a t-shirt did not do me any favors. 𝐿𝐈𝐧 didn't seem to notice. But then again, she wasn't raised in the cold mountains like I was. It looks so much better. I commented. And it did. It was no word of a lie. We did a smashing job. Only thanks to your designer touch. She grinned, tapping my shoulder. You brought it together so well. Yeah, you did very good. Luna. Caleb nodded, his hands on his hips, admiring my masterpiece. I had to admit they were right. I did good. We had repainted the entire porch, turning the dull grey concrete into a glowing white masterpiece. We varnished and polished the front door until it was shining wood again to complement the new makeover. But besides that, we had added so much more to this waste of space porch. I could now leave the house without feeling disgusted at the appearance of poor design. To the right of the porch sat a sofa swing. The fabric white and plush as it gentle swayed to its own rhythm. Before that was a round glass coffee table, sat upon a soft grey and white checked rug. Some tall plants sat on either side of the swing. Some vines along the back I hoped would wrap around the newly installed white fencing. We had the help of both Caleb and Everett in this one. Even Olive coming along to watch it all come together. The one borderless porch now stood proud and enclosed. Soon the vines would spread and grow, wrapping around the wired fairy lights and creating a sanctuary. Fake white candles sat upon the coffee table, hopefully creating a soft glow when the night hit. Then there was the left side. We squeezed for wooden patio chairs and a round table into the space with room for a wolf of Everett's size to squeeze in between the pillars or new fencing. And the table. We did the appropriate tests. To my 𝐴 𝐿𝐻𝐼𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Much to Everett's annoyance. It made Olive giggle though, and it was enough for the large male to shut up grumbling and get on with it. That side was also adorned with plants and fairy lights. Each wooden chair had complementing light blue or grey cushions. The table itself holding a white tablecloth a fraction of the size of the top. In the center lay a plate. With, yeah, you guessed it, more fake candles. I may have got a little overboard with the thought of fake candles. Safe, flame-proof, wolf scents proof equals perfect to me. Finishing the day with dinner, I found myself cuddled into the swing chair with a cup of tea in my hands as I watched the sun go down. Eliza had retreated after dinner. Caleb had caught her and whispered things in her ear that made her blush. So I was out here alone. But I didn't mind. Many people had called me 𝐊𝐲, and as the time went on, I found myself not even reacting to the title anymore. I had filled the day with fun, the ability to forget the restrictions and just apply my mind to organizing. I painted, I decorated, I arranged furniture. I laughed with Eliza, a girl who I didn't know very well compared to everyone else, and now I could finish it watching as the stars took over the sky in my own peaceful world. 63 I was disturbed by a gentle swaying, a soft sigh leaving me being disrupted. My eyes fluttered open, seeking the movement. It was a gentle lull, a swaying that came with every exhaled breath. Something warm was beneath my head as another thing stroked through my hair. My senses came too, my sleepy brain finally realizing that it was someone. Not a something. I had fallen asleep and someone was touching me. But before the panic could even start, a deep voice stopped me in my tracks. It's just me. Tulip. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐼𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. Settling my head back down on what I now realized was his thigh. His fingers returned to run through my hair and I let myself relax into his touch. I closed my eyes but stayed awake, listening to the soft chirping of crickets. I was not expecting to come home and find my mate asleep on a random swing on my front porch. He murmured softly. Caleb said, "You planned all of this?" I hummed a yes, too tired to speak. It looks amazing. His feet pushing the swing to keep moving. I'm glad you did it. What time is it? I wondered. There was a pause as he checked for the time. 20 to 12. Oh, when did you get back? I muttered. Around 11. He replied. I thought you'd be in bed. Tulip, not surrounded by blankets and electric candles on a damn swing. I laughed softly at that, nodding. I bought it for a reason. You mean? I bought it. The vibrations of his voice humming against my ear. Eliza told me about a cute thing called an alpha's tab. I quipped. He hummed. I bet she did. I'm glad you had fun. How was I supposed to win this little game if he didn't even care I spent his money? Sighing, I pulled myself up to sit by his side. His hand didn't stray from my body, sliding down my back as I rose. It wrapped around my hip, sliding beneath the fabric as he pulled me closer. My skin burned beneath his touch, my entire body coming alive with feeling. Staring up at his face, I noticed how exhausted he looked. His blue gaze was soft and hooded, with dark shadows that caressed his cheeks. I found my hand moving to lightly caress the puffy tissue, my lips pulling out into a frown. He jerked slightly at the contact, not expecting it. "You were tired," I mumbled. His jaw tensed, my eyes following the movement as the muscle flexed. Asra didn't reply, keeping those blue eyes locked onto my face. Being so close to him, his scent enveloped me. He smelled of dewy grass, fresh wood and just plain old outdoors. His skin was weirdly smooth, the light stubble of facial hair noticeable this close up. Asra continued to stare at me as I ran my eyes along his features. My body rose and fell in sync with the rise of his chest, our breaths falling in tandem. It was oddly calm, something I haven't felt in a while. So close to him, I could see the dark and outer circle of his iris, how his eyes light, and the closer to the pupil they got, they were a dazzling dark blue, the opposite end of the spectrum to my own. Dad always said I had the skies in my eyes, and perhaps Asra had the night. I smiled softly at my imagery, my fingers trailing down the side of his face to trace his jaw. His Adam's apple bobbed at his throat, my skin prickling with awareness as my touch neared his mouth. Taking the situation into my control, I slowly lowered my thumb along the crease of his lower lip. His breath hitched slightly, my lips parting with exasperation. I felt so alive to his touch I wondered if he felt the same. The new feelings were strange to me. I wasn't truly sure of what they meant. My chest constricted, a heaviness settling in my throat and between my breasts. My stomach would twist, an unsettling feeling of fluttering that had my toes curling with anticipation. He moved, facing me head on. My thumb fell from his mouth, my hand dropping to his shoulder as I stared at him. His eyes slowly darkened, the familiar trait of a wolf. It was slow, the pupil expanding until the entire rest turned dark. What would usually unnerve me didn't. It was slow, a gentle caress as his instinct took over, his hooded eyes staring into my own. I swallowed nervously where he hummed, a soft grumble sounding in his chest. My shoulders shuddered, my eyes closing as my skin pricked with goosebumps. I had never expected my body to feel so alive at a mere sound. But here I was, covered in goose flesh, at a mere grumble. With my eyes closed, I allowed my body to react to his warm breath and my face, the faint scent of coffee filling my nose. My lips parted on their own accord, as if waiting for the moment of clarity. A soft caress as his nose met mine. I heard him swallow as his hand touched my cheek. I had jerked at the unsuspecting contact, but his thumb brushed my lip the same way mine had his. I licked my lips nervously, my tongue tasting him. I was sure if I opened my eyes, I would find nothing but his own. His head moved, his nose sliding across mine before the faintest touch of bliss wrapped around my heart, leaving me in a chokehold. His lips met mine, softly testing my reaction as he pulled away. When I didn't move, he came back, pulling my mouth to his softly. The goosebumps returned as he kissed me, moving his mouth slowly against mine. My spine straightened before I melted into him. His touch grew stronger, lips parting mine as his tongue tasted me. I submitted to him completely, my body and mind turning to mush beneath the enthralling electric that coated my nervous system. He growled into my mouth, his hand tightening around my throat. It only edged me on further, an excited gasp escaping me as he moved his mouth from mine and pulled me into his lap. The hand on my throat didn't stray far, pulling my head back to his face as I straddled him. His other hand moved, grabbing and squeezing at my supple flesh before grabbing at my hips and pulling me tighter into him. I moaned softly, my body becoming on fire. Is this what heaven was like in the wolf world? Endless spine, tingling sensations that turned your head to mush. Is this what drugs felt like? Because I was pretty sure Asra was becoming addictive with each firm connection of our mouths. I felt my core burn, aching for touch as he ground me against him. I was becoming short on air, but thankfully he noticed and pulled away. My chest heaved as he tilted my head to the side, his mouth connecting with my jaw and throat. I panted in his embrace, my hands braced against his chest as he held me, his mouth sucked on my skin, teeth grazing and drawing blood that he quickly lapped up with his tongue. Groaning softly, he pulled my face back to his to stare into my eyes. I was sure my pupils were blown. My lips parted as I fought for breath. My body was alive and hot to the touch, begging for more. Asra studied me, his chest raising me up with every breath. His eyes held mine before running down my face, lingering on my lips and throat before dropping to my heaving chest. He licked his lips before moving back to stare into my eyes. His voice was husky when he spoke. 𝐶𝐤𝐬. My eyes closed briefly, a moan escaping me at the gruffness of his voice. 𝐶𝐤𝐬, look at me, he growled, and I copied his demand. Asra groaned, shifting his weight beneath me and letting me know just how much this affected him too. My thighs clenched around his thighs, pulling him in tight. So responsive. I licked my lips, watching and waiting for more. I loved the waiting, the excitement of seeing what was coming. My past relationships were always quickened over in a matter of seconds. My body had never felt this way, had never begged and yearned to be touched, to be filled. My core tightened at my thoughts, causing Asra's nostrils to flare. 𝐶𝐤𝐬, you need to get your head straight before I continue. I need you sober before I take you. Take me. The grip on my throat lessened, and I cocked my head curiously. My body burned for his touch, only sated by the grip he held on my body. His lips thinned as he watched me, and after a minute of silence, the fog holding me captive began to lessen. My breath evened out, my heart calming as my spine slowly straightened. Asra released my throat, the hand joining on the other side of my hips. He held me softly, despite the hardness between us, watching and expecting my answer. It was odd to be left hanging. He didn't move to take me, didn't demand for me to drop my panties and bend over despite how hard he was, despite how much he could. I cocked my head, staring at him with confusion. Why? He returned the gesture, his eyebrows lowering. Why what? You want me? Why not just take me? Genuinely confused. The confusion turned to anger, his chest rumbling with frustration. As he growled, I felt his hands tighten on my hips. I shrunk into myself a little, feeling ashamed of my questions. I had become so comfortable around him. Had I finally stepped over a line? My brain was fried. Why would I just take you? That is barbaric. I wondered. I thought that it was normal. What did that bastard teach you? To my authentic culinary, 𝐊𝐬𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. My heart stuttered at the sound of my name, unhappy with the lack of a nickname I was growing fond of. I'm just confused. My head is. I don't know what I'm doing. I admitted, bowing my head. He was quiet as I stared down at my hands, my fingers still digging into his shirt. We should probably. His hands grabbed me by the waist, keeping me firmly planted on him. No. I blinked, staring at him quietly as he fought for words. Don't apologize. 𝐶𝐤𝐬. I forget you have not been mine forever. I know your boyfriend had treated you unfairly, and I am slowly learning to understand and how your mind works. But I have never and will never demand your body for my own pleasure. You owe me nothing but. No, listen to me. 𝐶𝐤𝐬. Drawing my gaze up again. You do not owe me anything like that because my body reacts to yours. You are mine forever, but your body is yours, and I want you to realize that. You shouldn't have to give parts of yourself away for others. My breath was shaky when I exhaled, not even realizing I had held it for so long. My chest warmed as the tears burned in my eyes, my throat feeling dry. Only moments ago I had been ready to bear it all for him in a moment of fiery passion, and now I was tearing up, down. My period had really knocked my marbles across the world. I went to speak, but he cut me off again. Don't apologize. "Let's go to bed," he mumbled softly. I closed my mouth, taking his suggestion of sleep. He was tired, and I would bring this up another day. Moving to climb off his lap, his hands tight and around my waist. I raised my eyebrows with curiosity, but he just smirked before standing from the swing with me in his grip. My eyes widened comically, a small squeal leaving me as I rose to 6 feet in the air. His hands gripped my hips, pulling my front against his. My legs wrapped around his waist, my arms securing themselves around his neck in surprise and pulling at his shirt and hair. "Tulip," Asra grunted, his voice muffled. I glanced down at him, jerking away in surprise. My cheeks flushed in embarrassment at the fact I had just suffocated him with my breasts. He, of course, did not seem to care, a wide smirk erupting on his face. He carried me from the porch, the front door swinging behind us as we entered the dark house. There was only one light on in the hallway, illuminating the entrance sewer to the lift. It dinged loudly in the quiet house. Asra's footsteps light as he entered, the whirring mechanics of the death trap sprung to life, and I found myself moving even closer to him. His hands flexed on my body, one hand moving to wrap around my entire middle and squeeze me to him. I wasn't sure how he was holding me so effortlessly. But then again, he was a wolf, a fact that seemed to be affected by temporary kiss-based amnesia. The sound of gentle breathing accompanied the soft churning of metal before we surged to a stop. I swallowed nervously, holding my breath as the doors took longer than normal to open. When they did, and Asra stepped onto solid ground, I exhaled softly, causing him to chuckle in my ear. It was dark up here. Only the moonlight shone through the end window. The full moon was the other night. I boldly rested my head on Asra's shoulder, leaning my head against his as I stared down at the ground. Asra's fingers flexed against my skin, a shaky grumble vibrating my chest. Could werewolves purr? I was pretty sure that Asra could. A door opened, and I was met with complete darkness. I had complete trust in Asra's abilities, so when he walked into the dark room, I remained still. A click filled the quiet air, his clothes shifting as he straightened us up in the dull light of a lamp. He pulled his head away from mine, my jaw disconnecting from his shoulder. His eyes were back to blue, gazing at me so tenderly it made me fight a blush. "I'm going to use the bathroom. Get yourself comfortable." I nodded quietly before he set me down on the bed. I watched as he entered the bathroom, the bright glow of the light in there blinding me. Using the time alone to get undressed, I chose to sleep in just my panties tonight. It was warm now. It was nearing the end of May, and with Asra's abnormal body temperature, I would die if I wore clothes. I giggled to myself as I pulled the covers aside and slid myself into the fresh sheet. We had clean sheets every day, thanks to his employment of maids. I gasped at the realization, remembering I wanted to speak to him about raising wages. Making a mental note, I lay in wait for him to come back in the bedroom so I could confront him. But alas, as soon as my head hit the pillow and the quietness of the night dulled my senses, I was out like a light, 60 for the next morning. I ate breakfast peacefully. I made small conversation with the wolves surrounding me, sat beside Eliza and rejoiced about how good the patio looked with fresh eyes. Standing on the patio alone, I hugged an iced coffee to my chest as the rest of the pack went about their morning. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nobel, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I had a plan. My calm and open demeanor was merely a mask to hide what was going on inside my head. I finally wanted to speak to Asra regarding his employees' lack of payment and rewards. I knew that every morning he had a meeting with 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬, his beta, where they discussed the previous day and current events. 𝐊𝐬𝐬𝐬 would leave his meeting and go for a run in the morning. All I merely had to do was wait for a moment alone with Asra, one where if I was to fail, I could use the mate mark in my favor. As I waited for 𝐊𝐬𝐬𝐬 to leave, I sat on the swing and grinned over my cup. I had a notepad with me, already full of points and facts that I had drawn up whilst they spent an hour together talking crap. I did not have the hearing shifters possessed. so I would have to rely on my strongest sense sight. Time passed peacefully as I waited, and eventually I heard the front door click open. Casting my eyes up, 𝐿𝐲 stepped out of the threshold, shutting the door softly behind him. His eyes appraised the clean patio before settling on the place where I lay waiting. Good morning. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐲. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Out here alone? He wondered. I knew I wasn't alone. Asra had eyes everywhere. He thought I was dumb enough to not notice them. Smiling at 𝐿𝐲. Not if you're here. His jaw clenched nervously, a shaky laugh escaping him. Afraid not. I'm going for my morning run. Oh, 𝐿𝐲. I wondered, though interested. I'm more of a walking person. He nodded, dropping his gaze to the mark on my neck. I had tied my hair up today, knowing it would get Asra's attention. 𝐾𝐤 had told me that showing off a mark was a matter of pride for wolves, and it would definitely get Asra's hormones riled up. Walking is just as refreshing. You'll have to have a proper tour of the grounds one day, he insisted, and I quirked an eyebrow. Is that an invitation? Shaking his head. No, merely a statement. Luna, there it is. The title card. I exhaled loudly, shaking my head. Have a pleasant run. 𝐿𝐲 nodded, losing his smile as he took off toward the forest. I watched him go, disappearing into the sparse trees until he was a mere speck. I wondered if I was a wolf. Would I still see him right now? Would my vision be so strong to see that far through the dark trees? Could my ears pick up on the sound of his steps and ragged breaths as he ran? Silly thoughts get girls in trouble, my mother would say. I shook my head before rising from the swing. My half-finished coffee still in hand. I luckily remembered my way to Asra's office and leisurely wandered my way there. I didn't want to draw attention to myself being human with an alpha's mark already did enough of that. Reaching the large wooden door, I raised my fist to knock. I could picture him inside, smirking as he noticed my presence. A small call of entry met my weak ears, and I inhaled deeply before pushing the heavy door open. I grunted with the effort. I'm used to a door of this size and weight. As soon as there was a gap small enough, I slithered my way through sideways. 𝐿𝐲, what do I owe the pleasure? I spun around to face him, happy to find him alone. I smiled at him as I made my way to sit in the chair before his desk, running my eyes along the contents that lay before him. He had a computer to his left, a hefty pile of paper in front of him, with a black fountain pen hanging lazily in his right hand. I wanted to talk to you about something. And you wanted to do this now? He wondered, quirking an eyebrow. Not over breakfast or when we lay in bed together. No, that would be inappropriate. Oh, would it? He hummed, placing a lid on his pen. Yes, because what I want to talk about is a business matter. Is this about our bet? He grinned, leaning forward in his chair. I cringed at the sound of the leather squeaking beneath his jeans, shaking my head to diffuse the noise. No, it's about something else. He leaned back in his chair at my admittance, crossing his hands on his stomach. Well, you have my attention. 𝐿𝐲, it's about the awful way you run things around here. Holding his gaze. It is rather barbaric. His eyes narrowed, his body tensing and losing the lax, amused expression. Tread carefully here, 𝐿𝐲. We are animal as much as we are human. That is not what I mean. You need to draw up better employment contracts and wages for your employees. I stood, slamming the notepad on the desk. He visibly flinched, a low growl escaping his lips. I shook my head, placing both of my hands on the desk and leaning forward. I had worn a low-cut top, revealing the abundance of fatty tissue men seemed to adore so much. Successfully, Asra's eyes dropped to the tight tank top before falling to the short floaty skirt I wore to match. I knew the male gaze, so I was happy when my plan worked well. You have my attention, he hummed, meeting my eyes again. I grinned triumphantly, opening the notepad to the first eligible page. Half of the book was full of my inner thoughts and facts that I had learnt whilst being here. The only pad of paper I had found, so it had to be used for everything. Great. I grinned, spinning the book around. Why do you employ humans to clean up after your lazy sorts of a pack? His eyes narrowed again. They want to work. They have to work or they will die out there. You lived in Evermore. You do not know the extent of their lives. We well enabled the sectors. He shook his head. He was in Asra right now. This was Alpha's Zenith I was speaking to. Alpha of the Cardinal Pack. And when was the last time you went to visit all the sectors? I cocked my head. I may not have seen them, but I have lived and spoken to those who have. Serenity is half wolf, and yet she works for you. So what is it? The weaker species are only good as slaves. Is that where I lie? You've got different. I was the one to glare this time. Do you only listen to what you want to hear? His silence was my answer. His haughty demeanor not fuzzing me. He could try to intimidate me all he wanted, but I didn't feel the least bit afraid. Second, it is a matter of money. I continued. I know now personally just how much money you claim to have. Through the fact I have an infinite amount of money for shopping. You own multiple packs with multiple income sources. You are a rich and proud man. His chest puffed up, but I didn't give him the change to respond as I continued. However, you only pay the humans 2 coins per day. I glared. The chefs start at 5 in the morning, sometimes early. Cook the entire pack 3 meals a day with no doubt hardly any breaks. So 14 a day. Minimum. 2 coins a day is barely enough. It is enough to buy them at least dinner. Same old comment. I shook my head. You don't understand. 𝐊𝐲𝐳 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 𝐊𝐲𝐳 Let me dumb it down for you. He growled at my sarcasm, his eyes darkening. 𝐊𝐲𝐳 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 They work because they want to. 2 coins. When a meal is 1 coin. According to Piper, housing costs 10 coins a week. A further 3 for the use of water, gas and electricity, and groceries cost at least 6 coins a week for 1 person. They should be able to buy themselves new clothing, not shiver in their lonely cabins through the winter months. I explained, never blinking away from his glare. So, doing the math, that's 14 coins income. Cost for 1 meal a day is 20 coins alone. If they were to eat 3 times a day, which is normal and healthy, that's another 14, making it 30 for coins. That's 20 coins short. They do not work because they want to. They work because they have to. That is enough. 𝐊𝐲𝐳 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sitting upright. You do not get to tell me what to do with my staff. Yes, I do. I snapped. If I am your supposed mate for life and future Luna of this pack, then I have every damn right to fucking tell you where you are wrong. He didn't recoil like I thought he would. Instead, he slowly rose from his chair, placing both of his hands on the desk. He leaned forward until our faces were barely 2 inches apart. The wood creaked beneath his weight, his breath hot as he bared his teeth. You do not get to speak to me like that. He growled lowly. You do not get to control who I am. I retaliated, not moving away. I am a human. If this was me, 𝐊𝐲𝐳 𝐷𝐞𝐻𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I would have killed myself long ago. He finally flinched, moving his face back a further inch. His eyebrows furrowed, black eyes frantically scanning my face. But my words were truthful, and I knew he would find nothing but my determination. So, what are you going to do about it? Asra growled again, moving away from me. The wood cracked and creaked as he pushed from it, straightening his shirt and clearing his throat. As with every formal complaint, I shall put it forward to the council. Council? I cocked my head. He smirked wickedly. Yes, Luna. Every continental alpha has a council whom he has to go through to change major dynamics. Multiple packs mean multiple voices. I would have to plead my case to multiple wolves. I wasn't so sure about that. But I wasn't letting go of the upper hand I had over this conversation. I will create wonderful documents for everyone to read. I grinned, batting my lashes, pushing myself away from the table. I exaggerated, stretching my arms above my head. I succeeded in tightening my shirt and showing off my stomach, holding his gaze. Dropping my arms, I ran my fingers along my bare neck, barely missing his claim. He did well to not let his gaze wander, blinking at me with tightened fists. The mate bond was warm in my chest, tightening my core with a vengeance. I will see you at dinner. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Grabbing my notepad and walking away, I would not give him another damn word. He was so cocky and egotistical. 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐷 slapped that damn smirk off his face. He thought he was winning, but he had another thing coming his way. I let out a frustrated grunt as I pulled the door open, leaving a lot harder than entering. The damn cocky male behind me didn't move, but I didn't want him to. I held that door with all of my strength before running through the gap, exhaling my nerves. I straightened my clothes before walking down the halls. My eyes wandered aimlessly, smiling at any passing person to hide the fact I was fuming on the inside. I wanted to go for a swim, but I knew they would follow me. A blonde-haired person seemed to be the face I catch glimpses of through the hedges. As I passed by the kitchen, my nose caught the scent of a burning pan, possibly a tomato dish. My nose scrunched up with disgust. I turned around and went right into the kitchen. It was chaos, small women running around in white outfits as a middle-aged woman stood by one of the large cookers. She was angry, her pale face noticeable red with frustration. I knew right away she was in charge and made my way over to her. Her brown eyes darted to me, equal in height. Is everything okay? Her nose scrunched up, scrutinizing me. I remained still as she studied me, not letting her snooty face bother me. She turned to dismiss me. Smells like someone's burnt some tomato, I commented, glancing around. I lost a chef to norovirus and everyone else is incapable of tying their own shoes. She grunted, turning her gaze back to me to scan me again. What did you say your name? I didn't. I grinned. But it's Ailia. She frowned, nodding. Well, to my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐷, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Can you cook? Yet, I sure can. I was a waitress in my old town, before I became chef. I nodded. Very well. Grab an apron and get to work. She waved to behind me. I'd be delighted too. Stephanie. She grunted again before turning back to the hobs. I grinned, shrugging on an apron and placing the notepad securely in the large pocket that lay across my hips. Washing my hands, I wiped them dry on a towel before moving to help Stephanie. I was excited to have something to do, to keep my hands busy and mind numb. Perhaps if Stephanie liked me so much, I could come back every day and help with cooking. Who needed a bet to get a job when I could just sweet-talk my way into one? More like smart-talk my way into one. 65. How's the plates looking? Serenity. Clean and shiny. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐷, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She hollered back. I grinned, carrying the hot pan to a trolley. It was heavy and full of chili, but I managed it with no one's help. Serenity moved to touch the pan, and I batted her away with my hip. I glared at her. You'll burn yourself. She flushed, nodding quietly. It was nearing 1 o'clock, which meant serving time. I had spent all morning in the kitchen and barely recognized the time passing until Stephanie told me there was half an hour left. The elder woman had tried to keep me in check, but once she realized I knew recipes and what I was doing, she left me to it. I made my chili recipe, along with rice and vegetables. There was also lasagna setting on the side from the left, over mince I had. Everything was in bulk in this place, and I felt in over my head with joy. I don't think I've stopped smiling since I started. Serenity seemed to be head of the serving party, making sure there were enough clean plates and cutlery to take out. She waited patiently as I placed the many dishes on the trolley. The big chili pot took up most of the space, but I squeezed in a few lasagnas around it. Once full, Serenity gave me a wide smile before wheeling it out to the me 𝐨𝐴, wiping my hands across my brow. I exhaled loudly. I hoped Serenity could handle it, come back with the trolley. After a longer pause than I expected, I couldn't wait much longer for her return and made my way into the dining room. My eyes locked on her instantly, placing the lasagna into their designated spots. The chili remained on the tray, and as I approached her, her eyes filled with relief. "Want help with it?" I cocked my head. "Please," she breathed, glancing around the room nervously. Together we lifted the pot, Serenity grabbing a large spatula so she could push it into the right places. We filled 6 deep trays with the pan's contents, before wheeling it back into the kitchen. Together we carried all the remaining sides and vegetables, filling up the remaining trays as the pack slowly flooded in. I was carrying a pot of 𝐾𝐿 to the buffet when a low growl reverberated around the room. Most wolves turned their heads toward the sound, but going by the raising 𝐿𝐽 that tickled my skin, I knew it was Asra. I smirked knowingly he wasn't tapping with something, and I had the faintest clue of what that could be. Ignoring his presence, I filled up one tray with the large pot of corn. There were around trays on this buffet, enough to feed the entire pack. I think Stephanie said we fed 120 to people in total, but most didn't attend we clunch time. Some wolves had their own homes or cabins dotted around the land, mainly those older with children. Another thing was there were no children here. The humans lived in their own cabins, unwelcome in the pack house. I heard servers whisper how there were little wolves today, excited chirps of being able to take any leftovers. It made my heart ache, which only made my confidence at pissing Asra off sore. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Speak of the devil. I lifted my gaze from the corn, seeking him out from the crowd. Asra was walking toward me, his eyes shadowed with anger. His shoulders were bunched, fists clenched at his sides, and I grinned, ready for his attention. "Yes, what are you doing?" "Helping." Gesturing to the vegetables. "What else? You do not help. You are not the help. Take off the damn apron and come sit down." To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐴, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He had the decency to tell me what to do when he would not even listen to me otherwise. He had to get the council to help him. Picking up the empty bowl and walking into the kitchen. He was hot on my heels, his anger palpable in the way he held himself. If he was a cartoon, he would have steam coming from his ears. I set the empty bowl on the side, my hands moving to my hips as I scoured my cooking area. I think everyone else had everything covered. Time to start the dishes. "What do you think you are doing?" He huffed, grabbing me by the elbow. I stumbled backward, his strength surprising me as I crashed into him. "I could ask the same to you." Humans scurried from the room. Those who had food to take grabbed it in haste and ran. I eyed them with envy. So far, I had managed to make myself light in the kitchen. None of the humans here knew I was the Luna. None of them thought twice about the bite on my neck being the alphas. Hand toying with the apron strings at my back snapped me out of my thoughts. I startled ahead and slapped Asra's hands away from my body. He growled as I spun to face him, glaring into his eyes. "What is your problem?" I huffed. "Don't you have other things to attend to? Don't test me. Tulip, get out of that fucking apron." I tried to repress the thrill that shot through me at the sound of him cursing. Crossing my arms, I chewed my lips to restrain the desire. His eyes followed the movement before darting up to meet mine when I huffed. "I am not taking it off. I enjoy cooking." I shook my head. His eyes narrowed. "You are not the help. You are the, don't say it." "I am not anything. I'm 𝐿𝐴. People need help cooking and I'm helping them." 2 chefs for an entire 100 wolves. That's ridiculous. I employ over the chefs. He grunted. That is not the point. I exclaimed. Today there was only one, and if I hadn't stepped in and worked my magic, there would be nothing edible on that buffet. You have more status than anyone in this damn pack. He grabbed my arm. You do not control me. I am the same as anyone here. We are all the same damn breed. I was bored. I like to cook. That is all there is to this. Now you sit your alpha ass down and eat some damn lunch before it goes cold. I snatched it away, childishly stepping back. I highly suggest the chili and rice. His head reared at my outburst. I will not have you cooking for our pack. If I cannot cook, then I cannot stay in this pack. Our pack, he grunted. Come and get some dinner. I glared. If this is our pack, then take my advice and the wages and working conditions. It is up to the council. I don't care about your shitty council. I sneered up at him. If you cannot handle basic human rights, then you have no right to handle what I do with my spare time. I am going to work with them and I am going to work on their conditions. If it means I do not get to eat, then that's what it means. He flinched, and I watched as his face slowly softened from its hardened glare, running a hand down his face in frustration. Whatever. I'm not arguing anymore. Asra huffed before turning and leaving the room. I grinned triumphantly, patting myself on the back for winning that battle. Wiping my sweaty palms on my apron, I turned around and got to work on the dishes. I hand-washed all the big pans before drying and putting them away, making sure my sides were clean and tidy before calling it done for now. People had slowly started to stream back in, slowly bringing used cutlery and plates to the various dishwasher machines. I knew most would be finished with dinner and Stephanie would prepare the desserts. This pack definitely needed more chefs. Stephanie did the vegetables and sides and was now doing desserts. It was easy for one person, but the main meals would be a task for someone who wasn't up for it. When more used crockery made its way into the kitchen, I set down my cleaning cloth and headed out to the buffet to see what was empty. Surprisingly, the dining room was still a third full, and half of the buffet was empty. I was pleased to see most of my chili was gone. Some was even coming back with dirty plates for more. Eve was the first to openly speak to me. Her surprised expression had me grinning. To my authentic 𝐶𝐮𝐬 𝐷𝐬𝐿𝐵, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Why are you wearing an apron? I helped cook today. Grinning lazily, her expression changed to one I couldn't decipher. She was confused and shocked at my appearance, and now she seemed regretful. Remorseful? No. There was nothing to be sorry for. I think maybe just upset. You cooked, yes. Who cooked? me丨A chirped, coming to stand beside her sister. Her eyes found mine, running down the length of my body with a wide grin. Oh, you cooked, why? Exactly what I was thinking, Eve muttered. I wanted to help. I was bored. So sweating, stressing and getting dirty is fun. Eve frowned. Sounds great to me. me丨A laughed, scooping some more chili onto her plate at her sexual innuendo. Tastes great. Luna, I thanked her softly, giving Eve a concerned look before taking to empty trays from the bain. Marie, they were still warm, but I could handle it if I used my apron as protection. I mindlessly carried them into the kitchen and began to wash the grime away, humming a simple tune. By the time the lunchtime shift finished, my stomach was grumbling about food. I washed my hands and made my way to the buffet, eager to see what was left. Much to my surprise, there were plenty for the 10 or so humans helping in the kitchen today. With a plan in mind, I made my way into the kitchen and Amal to join me by the buffet. There were only a dozen wolves left by now, and most were finished in just talking. There's plenty left. Make yourself some food. I gestured. Their eyes widened, muttering nervously between each other. Some even shook their heads violently. Taking a step back, I placed my hands on my hips, tootying at them. You made this happen, so take your reward. I will take all the burdens. Just bloody eat. Some didn't have to be told again. Grabbing plates and spooning generous portions with greedy eyes. The few that remained watched with barely contained jealousy. Serenity was the first to corner me, wrapping her palm around my forearm. I glanced down at her, smiling softly. "You're eating. We are not allowed." She shook her head. "You are as much of this pack as I am." "Serenity." I shook my head. "If you don't eat, I won't eat." Her eyes dropped to the mark on my neck, her nostrils flaring slightly as she inhaled. With a wry expression, she let go of my forearm and nodded. I watched as she grabbed a plate before handing me one, and I took it with a wide smile, spooning just enough rice and chill for myself. I was grabbing a corn cob when someone interrupted my train of thought. "What do you think you are doing?" My head snapped up towards the male wolf in question. He had cornered a small human girl who was just scooping a slice of lasagna onto her plate. Her lower lip wobbled, unable to meet the gaze of the male wolf. My blood boiled, eyes narrowing into slits as I glared at him. I handed my plate to Serenity before marching my way over and sliding myself between the two. He was around 6 feet tall, so stood at only a head higher than me, which gave me a decent confidence boost. His eyes flashed to me with annoyance, his chest heaving with breath. "What's the problem here?" I crossed my arms. "Food is for the pack, not the help." His breath hinted with my chili. I smirked slyly. "You should be grateful you have meals prepared and cooked for you on demand, without payment." Meanwhile, these humans are stuck in that kitchen all day with nothing to show for it. Not even a hot meal. To my 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐷𝐞𝐝 me丨A, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐷𝐞𝐝. Stepping close so his breath and my face. "That is the hierarchy. Oh, you want to talk hierarchy? Sit your ass down and mind your own fucking business." I heard a sharp intake of breath from the girls behind me, clearly afraid that I was about to be embarrassed or shouted at. The male's eyebrows rose with surprise, clearly unsuspecting of my retort. I cocked my head, flashing my neck to him, and successfully his eyes snapped to the silver, white scar below my ear. His jaw tensed, nostrils flaring much like Serenity's did. "You are not the full Luna yet. Human, you don't get to tell me what to do." Mutters filled the room. "You are not a full man yet. Wolf, wait until your balls drop before you talk about respect and who's in charge." I retorted. There were gasps as the room fell quiet. Clearly upset, I heard his barely their masculinity. The status, beating asshole growled and grabbed my throat. I couldn't help but flinch as they jostled me, but leveled my gaze with him. His mouth opened, about to speak when, lo and behold, my rescuer came to save me.